Yay! Back live with you this week from HQ with special guest Jim Rosica, editor-in-chief of City and State Florida. Two mooks in the Terracotta room giving you a rundown of everything the legislature's done in the first half of the 2023 session. Stick with us. We're going to have a lot of fun and fill you in. And we'll talk about Richard Corcoran, Gucci loafers, and Chihuahuas.
We're so free that we have extra free to spread around.
And we want to give you some of our free.
We have surplusage of free.
You're listening to A Deeper Dive with Dara, a podcast by City and State Florida.
Hello and welcome, Deeper Divas, to A Deeper Dive with me, Dara Cam.
And me, Jim Rosica, editor-in-chief of City and State Florida.
We are, if it sounds unusual, it is because, yes, folks, for everyone who's been following my little journey, we are here live together in the Terracotta room. Yay, it is so good to be back in person. This is my first time back in the office since I had my little injury 3 months ago.
Little injury, she says.
Anyway, but enough about me. We are at the midpoint of the legislative session, and so Jim Rosica and I are going to give you a little breakdown of what the legislature has done so far. And Jim, I was speaking to an association yesterday, and we were talking about how unusual it is for priority issues of the governor and the House Speaker and the Senate President to have been accomplished so early in the session. These are things that typically can linger, can be negotiated through the budget negotiations, and it has been zip, zap, zoom since they started less than 4 weeks ago, or 4 weeks ago.
Here is what I think is going to happen. Here is my entirely unreliable prediction.
Here you have it.
We're going to...
Wait a minute.
Well, okay.
Oh, wait, I don't have a drum roll. I only have a rim shot.
I thought you had a drum roll.
I have a rim shot.
No, that's not the same.
I know.
My entirely unreliable prediction is we're going to sine die early this year.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're not shocked by that?
No, because... That's what the whisper.
Because you talk to the same people that I do.
Yes, that's what everyone's saying. They're going to finish early,
right.
And that will give Governor DeSantis a little extra time to formally announce that he is going to run for governor. Now, when we started doing this podcast a couple of months ago, you were very skeptical about whether DeSantis was going to actually run for governor or not.
And now I'm going to make another prediction, which will be probably wrong. Ron DeSantis will announce that he is running for the GOP nomination for president to happen in 2024. But he will announce on July 4th, 2023.
Right. I'm sorry. What I said was he was going to run for governor everyone I'm sure understands. I am blaming everything still on my fractured tibia. I'm still hobbling. So I meant run for president. Obviously, he just ran for re-election.
Correct.
And he was just elected. So a July 4th announcement
a July 4th announcement
would be perfect because it's Freedom Florida, right? He's running on a platform, or he is governing on a platform of freedom.
It is the Florida blueprint for freedom, of course.
America's blueprint.
And he is America's architect, using Florida's blueprint for freedom to extend freedom to the rest of the United States.
Because we're not free?
No, we're so free that we have extra free to spread around.
And we want to give you some of our free.
We have surplusage of free.
A plethora of free.
We do have a piñata. We have a piñata of freedom that must be spread.
Oh my gosh, it is so fun to be back in person. You can feel the
I apparently
energy.
excited the computer so much it tinged.
You know, I'm turning mine on Do Not Disturb, so I suggest that you do that too. I don't know, people, it's real. We're real reporters.
We're together. We're back in the Terracotta room.
We are. It is so fun. So, all right. Well, Jim there made a prediction. Write it down. Put it in your calendars. And are we going? What's the over and under for that?
I'm not an odds maker. I'm just a predictor. I'm gonna leave it to those.
I like it. I'm siding with you on that. I'm not going to bet against you on that.
All right.
So far, Jim and I were just scrolling down a couple of items that the legislature has already accomplished. I think the governor has signed all of these into law so far. House Bill 1, that is universal school. I'll just rattle them off and then we can.
Rattle them off, exactly.
Right. Universal vouchers, constitutional carry, maybe
which is
not.
really not constitutional carry.
Guns,
guns, permitless
Live
carry.
local, which is workforce housing, tort reform, wildlife corridor, and not done the one that he has not signed yet. But by the time you all listen to this podcast, he probably will, and that is a 6-week ban on abortions. So,
I'd now like to make another prediction.
You go for it.
Governor Ron DeSantis will sign the 6-week abortion ban on Good Friday.
Good Friday. That's right, because we're coming up. The legislature will be off at the end of this week.
Correct.
We're recording
Thursday and Friday.
Holy Weekend.
Holy Weekend.
What is that?
It's the weekend of Easter, basically.
I gotcha.
And the week that leads up to Easter is called Holy Week.
Holy Week. So we're in Holy Week. Is this Ash Wednesday?
No, that's already happened.
Okay, that's before Lent.
But Good Friday.
We're in Lent now, right?
We're in Lent. Good Friday.
So no meat?
No, well, maybe not for maybe not for some of us. No, you pick something to give up. It could be meat.
What did you give up? Did you give up?
It probably is meat. My wife is a Presbyterian minister. I can't remember the last time I've been in a Catholic church. I've forgotten all the rules.
Okay.
It's terrible.
So
I admit.
Presbyterians don't have to give up anything.
Yeah, they do.
But wait a minute.
But they're not. The whole meat and fish thing is. I don't really catch that from them.
So Reverend Erin, she's a minister? Did she give anything up? You don't have to give away her secrets.
Yes, she did, but I really can't discuss it on this podcast.
It's not for us. Oh, okay. Well, now maybe that does.
Hey, now rim shot. There we go. That merits the rim shot.
All right. So let's talk about school vouchers. That is the universal vouchers. Every child in every public school in the state will be entitled to about an $8,000 voucher that they can take to any school, private school, charter school, home school.
No, not charter school. Well, they don't need to take it to a charter school.
Right, because that is a public school.
A public charter school is a public school. So
That's right.
You do not need a voucher. You just need to win a lottery to get your kid into a charter school.
Yeah. So tell me, as somebody who has kids in school, school-age kids, and I haven't really written about education, but I was talking to a neighbor of mine who is a teacher at a private school here in town, and even she was expressing some concern about what this might do, the impact this might have on the state's public education system and on private schools too. So tell me, what are your thoughts as a parent, as an observer, I
think very generally,
a pundit,
from what I read, because I too am not an education reporter, the concern is that the public school districts, the county school districts, don't know what this is going to mean for their budgets, because obviously you're going to have X amount of children who are going to or X amount of parents and guardians who are going to exercise the opportunity to use a voucher to maybe put their kids in another school. And so, what is that going to mean to the public school districts? How many kids are they going to have? How much money are they going to have? How much is this voucher program going to cost? I know that there was some confusion about how much are all these vouchers going to cost the taxpayer. I don't know that that's been
a wide
settled.
Variance in estimates for some between $700 million to $4 billion or something.
Some level of gajillions.
Yes, it's a lot of money, and schools, whether you have 2,000 students or 200 students, they still operationally, you have to maintain them and you have to keep the lights on. And, so there's a lot of questions about how the schools are going to be funded and how much money, if they lose funding, if they'll be able to continue to provide the same services that they're providing to the students that remain. Is it a lot of teeth gnashing, more than what it might be deserved? Do you think a lot of parents are going to avail themselves of this, or do you think a lot will it might be too overwhelming to try to figure out? And also, the private schools aren't required to take any of these public school students, right? So they can pick and choose the students that they want. Well, that's a concern. I think is who's going to be left behind.
Like any institution, they would. I'm sure they would have to apply and get in. I don't know how many mid-school year transfers, and we're almost at the end of the school year. We're pretty close. The school year ends in May in Florida, and we're in April at the taping of this podcast. So I don't think that any effect is not going to show until the beginning of the 23-24 school year. And again, you make the great point that, just because you have a voucher doesn't automatically mean you get into the school of your choice. It just means that you have a voucher to pay for it. Whether you get in is up to the school, is up to your kids' grades, who knows?
Right. Parents can also use these funds if they are homeschooling. They can buy computers, tutors,
books, workbooks.
So it's I think they call them education spending accounts is another word for
ESAs.
Yes, it's an ESA. And this was a priority of House Speaker Paul Renner, who we had on the podcast earlier this year. And I tried to ask him about it. It was before the legislative session, and I had heard that this was something that he wanted, and he very adeptly did not. He said that it was something that they would be considering, but he didn't give us any details about just how far they would be going. So we now know.
How far
they went all the way.
And they went all the way. And now Speaker Renner has, quote unquote, his bill for the year. And now moving on, President Pasadomo, Kathleen Pasadomo, R. Naples, has her bill of the session, the Live Local Act, which provides money for, I guess, very broadly speaking, it promotes workforce housing.
Yes.
Hopefully people will be able to live closer to where they work.
Right.
I know that President Pasadomo kind of also talked about this in very vague terms many weeks before the session. I believe she made she gave the example of an abandoned shopping center. There are a lot of abandoned shopping or underutilized shopping centers,
like malls.
Could they? No, I think
strip
malls. And could they somehow be converted into housing?
Right.
I don't know whether that exact idea got translated over into the final bill.
Seems a little bleak, but maybe if they're raised and then they put something nice up.
You can renovate strip malls to make them look very nice.
And put in a little internet cafe on the corner
Internet
downstairs.
cafe on the corner, and you could get
Where
up
do you live? I live above the internet cafe.
Yes, walk down the strip mall to the internet cafe, get your coffee, check your email, and come back and get ready for work.
Yeah, okay.
It could happen.
No, I don't mean, I'm not disparaging this because especially in her neck of the woods, the Naples area, where the problem is that the people who work in the restaurants, at the baristas, can't afford to live locally.
Exactly.
And so it is a problem where people are being priced out of housing.
Because you know who also lives in Naples?
Rick Scott.
Rick and Ann Scott.
Yes.
Our former governor and first lady, now our U.S. senator and first lady. What do you call a wife of a U.S. senator?
Mrs. Scott.
There you go.
Yeah. All right. So then tell us about tort reform.
So very funny about tort reform. So again, in very broad strokes, the legislature passed a bill and it was signed to, as the News Service of Florida described it, to shield businesses and other, organizations, companies from lawsuits, from what the proponents of the bill called frivolous lawsuits, although I don't know that we ever really defined what frivolous is. In any event, and so what happened after that, or as that bill was about to be passed, as astute readers of City and State Florida will remember, the organization that represents the defense bar, defense lawyers, those who represent big business, sent a letter to the Supreme Court saying, hey, we're getting beat up by plaintiffs. They're filing hundreds, if not thousands, of suits all over the state trying to get in under the wire. And then the Florida Justice Association, which represents the state's trial lawyers, said, oh, it'll be fine. And the defense bar asked Florida Supreme Court Chief Justice Carlos Muñiz to put in an emergency administrative order to deal with all of the motion practice that would result from all of these complaints being filed. And as of I last checked, there was no emergency administrative order to deal with that. And then Morgan & Morgan.
John Morgan.
Co-founded, if not founded, by John Morgan, the chief operating officer of his law firm, sent an email out to all of the lawyers in the firm. It's basically saying, no more Mr. Nice Guy. We're not giving the defense lawyers any more favors. We're not giving them an inch. We're not giving them a yard. Basically saying, screw them all. And so that caused quite a kerfuffle because they thought that Morgan & Morgan was being very mean. And I did speak to John Morgan about the email that was sent to me by someone, and John did confirm, yep, that's our email. And we had a whole story about that in which John said, yeah, it's our email, and we're not apologizing for it. This is,
I'm not sure.
If this is war, this is war.
Why did it create such a kerfuffle? I mean, the legal system is an adversarial system, and if the legislature and the new laws that were promoted by the Chamber of Commerce and NFIB and other business groups, associated industries, these bills were championed, these changes were championed by them, why would the plaintiffs' lawyers not say, okay, it's war?
Well, what they're saying is there is always a certain amount of comedy amongst the members of the bar in
Not
terms
comedy.
Sorry.
Yes.
COMITY. So that, if somebody gets sick, somebody had a vacation planned, you need a continuance, you need a delay. Okay, I won't oppose.
Right.
I won't oppose a request for continuance. And what the Morgan & Morgan email said is basically, no, we're done. No more favors. We don't care. You might even be friends with the lawyer on the other side. Sorry, we're not. It's just we're not going there anymore.
But that's one firm. They do have a gazillion lawyers.
They do have quite a lot of lawyers. As they famously say,
size matters.
They do. That it does.
Is it comedy with one M or
No,
two
it's
M's?
Comity.
Just one M.
Comity.
All right, I'll trust you on that. I won't
that is
Google it.
correct.
Because you're a lawyer, so
That's
you
one of the
would
words
know.
I learned in law school, as a matter of fact, was comity.
Do you know anything about the wildlife corridor?
I know nothing about the wildlife corridor.
Okay, neither do I, but it's
We'll
a
move
good
on.
thing. It's a good thing.
It's a good thing. Everybody was for it.
President Pasadomo really likes it.
Actually, what's funny is I do remember when I was in journalism school many years ago, one of my colleagues wrote kind of like the equivalent of a senior thesis on wildlife corridors. And what I remember from this story, and this is in the early 90s, is, with so much development, highways that, cut off, an animal on one side of an interstate, for instance, is now stuck on that side and they can't get to the other side. Or if they do try, maybe if they don't fly, obviously, they might get run over.
Right.
And so
we call that roadkill.
Well,
here.
we don't like roadkill in Florida.
No.
Wildlife corridors, you can build things like, I'm just remembering this again from what this guy wrote in the early 90s. You can construct like little tunnels for the woodland creatures to get from one side of an interstate to another. That may not at all be what wildlife corridors are now, but I'm telling you that's what they were in the 1990s.
Well, I love the idea of these little like pedestrian bridges over highways for raccoons and armadillos.
Let the armadillos wander.
My imagination is really taking off with that right now. Thank you for painting that portrait
Absolutely.
for me.
Let's move on before I get myself into more trouble.
We're talking about a 6-week ban on abortion, or a restriction on abortions after 6 weeks, which would effectively, the vast majority of women, according to critics of this measure, would not know that they are pregnant by the time that it would be too late to get an abortion. We already last year passed a 15-week restriction that is being litigated in the Florida Supreme Court right now. That has not been resolved, that litigation. But not surprisingly, the Florida legislature has moved forward and imposed it's a very sharp shift in the direction in the anti-abortion direction. What says you?
Certainly your point about the fact that the critics of this new bill say that it is unfair to women because many of them will not know they are pregnant by the point that they're not allowed to have an abortion anymore. And that is one of the reasons why many women, many people came to Tallahassee over the weekend. They were here yesterday. That would be Monday the 3rd, for those of you listening to us later, to protest the bill. And there were quite a few things that happened, one of which was there were people who were upset with the bill, who were creating outbursts in the Senate chamber while the bill was being discussed. At one point, Senate President Kathleen Pasadomo had to order the sergeants to clear the chamber. Actually, that was after Majority Leader Debbie Mayfield actually made a motion to clear the chamber. She was very, very visibly upset about the repeated outbursts. So the public galleries were cleared at one point. And then later in the evening, there were a group of protesters who gathered outside Tallahassee City Hall, I am assuming because it has now been made so onerous for people to protest at the Capitol. That's another story.
Yeah.
And so there is some confusion about what the timeline is, but the organizer of the protest said they were trying to get permission to congregate in Clayman Plaza, but couldn't get permission. And then they said they had gotten permission to congregate outside Tallahassee City Hall. And then apparently the folks at City Hall found out that some of the protesters wanted to sleep in front of City Hall overnight before the Senate debate, the Senate discussion on Monday. And city officials said that they didn't like that, so they put up a sign in front of City Hall that says, City Hall is now a park, and there's no overnight sleeping or camping.
So they made it a park by putting up a sign?
Yeah, except it's I don't think it's really a park. I think they just put up a sign. But in any event, they did put up a sign. And so the protesters the loose band of protesters who are calling themselves Occupy Tally, which includes people who were affiliated with Planned Parenthood and Florida Now, still decided to have a vigil, a protest outside Tallahassee City Hall last night. Senate Democratic leader Lauren Book was there. Florida Democratic Party Nikki Fried was there.
Chairwoman.
I'm sorry. Florida Democratic Party Chair Nikki Fried was there. And at one point, they were sitting in a circle, I believe, and singing. And a bunch of police came out of City Hall and basically gave them the final warning, either get up and leave or you're going to be arrested. And so a bunch of people got arrested, including Nikki Fried and Lauren Book.
Yeah, I was at home. As you know, I'm recovering from my injury, and I had a big day out yesterday. So I was at home about 9 o'clock getting ready for bed, and a friend of mine called me, and I had just been on the phone with her for quite a while, and she called me back, and I thought it was a butt dial, and she said, no, look at Twitter. And Twitter was abuzz with so I saw short clips of Lauren Book wearing the same green dress and high heels that she had on during floor debate yesterday, with her hands behind her back, and Nikki Fried looked like she was a little readier for protest. She had on sneakers and like some workout clothes, and I think she had on a t-shirt that said F.
Just effing vote.
Okay, yeah, I knew there was
part of the word effing was asterisked out.
Right. Okay, so just effing vote, because your votes do matter.
She was clearly prepared for a night in jail. Although neither of them did spend a night in jail. In criminal law parlance, they were ROR'd. They were released on their own recognizance. They were given NTAs, notices to appear.
Okay.
So they did not actually spend the night in jail.
But they were fingerprinted and booked?
I assume so. I checked the court dockets, and it shows, and I don't know all of the names of all the other folks who were arrested, but I do know that it shows that Nikki Fried and Lauren Book were charged with trespassing after warning.
I gotcha. Do you know how many people were arrested altogether?
I believe that the Tallahassee police actually put out a statement that night that said 11 people.
Okay, so not a lot.
No, and actually the I believe it was Planned Parenthood put out a tweet when it was happening that said dozens of protesters. It was I don't believe it was dozens.
Well, people expressing their First Amendment rights,
and,
or
and
maybe
Twitter
not.
And Tallahassee Twitter was all aflutter.
Tallahassee Twitter
So many
went
different
crazy.
So many different video angles of the arrests.
Yeah, there was a lot of sweaty faces. sweaty handcuffs, sweaty palms, and a lot of
on
I
backs.
heard a lot of shame. There was a lot of shame, shame.
As they were laying hands on people and handcuffing them, there were people. One video you could hear, obviously, there were people behind the person taking the video calling, "Shame, shame."
Yeah.
So there you go.
It was quite an event, right across
For
the
Tallahassee,
street from
my
the
gosh,
Capitol.
absolutely.
Right across the street from the Capitol. That's where City Hall is.
Tallahassee City Hall is across the street from the Florida Capitol, and it took me back to not only the Black Lives Matter protests of a couple of years ago, but it also brought me back to the Capitol takeover in 2000, gosh knows what, by the Dream Defenders and others, which nobody remembers except me.
I don't remember that. I remember the sit-in. by...
There was they took over the Capitol and they were sleeping on the floor.
Oh, I do remember that.
Yes.
Yes, they did.
And at one point,
they
Rick
would
Scott...
not be allowed to do that now.
No.
They would not be allowed to do that now.
And people are not allowed to do that now because of that and because of Black Lives Matters. I remember at the time Rick Scott had ordered all of the portraits of the governors to be taken off the walls of the plaza level because people were afraid they were going to get bumped into and damaged and stuff. And
we need
also,
to protect those portraits of those old white men.
Old white men. And that's also what started the transformation of the governor's office waiting room.
I know.
Governor's
you
office.
Used to be able to go, and there used to be chairs in there.
There were chairs and coffee tables and bookcases.
You could sit. One of my favorite things to do was to sit there when I wasn't busy, which was hardly ever, never. But I would sit there with my little computer, my little laptop, just to see who was coming in and out of the governor's office.
That's exactly
because
correct.
You could get a good idea of, it would be surprising sometimes. One time I ran into Jack Nicklaus there going in to meet
I got excited because I thought you were going to say Jack Nicholson, but no.
No, I did see Alex Baldwin in the Capitol one time, but it was on the Senate, outside the Senate chambers. He was campaigning. I forget what the issue was. He's actually a lot shorter in person than he seems on screen, just so you know.
I had no idea, and now I do.
But yeah, that did lead to the
They built like a big counter.
A barrier.
Yeah.
You really are not welcome to go and hang out.
No.
And they had coffee table books, and we used to gather out there before press conferences. The governors used to actually let reporters back into their offices to sign bills.
That's right.
Really quite frequently. Stick with us. We'll be right back with Jim Rosica.
From the team that brought you Deeper Dive with Dara Cam comes a brand new e-newsletter on the Florida man who may be president. Governor Ron DeSantis is his own conservative brand, an unapologetic culture warrior who could run for the White House as early as 2024. The DeSantis Files is your one-stop shop for the best in reporting, analysis, and opinion on the man's supporters call America's governor. Delivered straight to your inbox twice a week, learn more by emailing editor@cityandstatefl.com. That's cityandstatefl.com. Here at Deeper Dive, we want to hear from you, the listeners. We invite you to send your questions, comments, and feedback to our mailbag. You can reach us at deeperdive@cityandstatefl.com. That's deeperdive@cityandstatefl.com. Get your 2 cents in by sending us an email.
Welcome back to A Deeper Dive with Dara. I've done that once with Governor DeSantis, and that was when he signed the gaming compact with the chairman of the Seminole Tribe of Florida, Marcellus Osceola Jr., and I think I was invited in, and maybe 2 or 3 other reporters were invited in for that, but there was no big group that we used to do for big bill signings. The governor has taken a very different approach to governing.
And again, that's an entirely other podcast.
Another bill that was signed was I keep wanting to say constitutional carry. The governor is calling it constitutional carry, but critics on both sides, critics of gun rights advocates say it's not true constitutional carry under the bill that the governor signed quietly behind closed doors this week, last week, whatever, the first week in April. Was a measure that will allow people to carry concealed weapons without getting a state-issued license, which was how we had it for many, many years in Florida. We had over 2 million permits that have been issued by the Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services. I think I'm right about that number. Jim will correct me while he...
So if we're not going to have concealed carry, well, what are they called in Florida? Concealed weapon licenses,
Right.
CWLs.
Right.
Does that mean we're going to have a lot of layoffs at the Department of Agriculture? Because in Florida, I know this sounds weird to those of you who don't know this, but the state's Department of Agriculture has a division of licensing that takes care of the licensing for concealed carry. Now, if they're not going to be doing those anymore, that's going to mean a lot of people out of work, won't it?
Well, I don't know how many people are in that section.
I'm going to have to ask Wilton Simpson.
You should ask Wilton Simpson.
I'm gonna.
He is the commissioner of the Department of Agriculture.
Yes, he is.
And, but some gun rights advocates say it doesn't go far enough because you should be able to openly carry a gun. Now, the governor got into a little bit of a pickle, maybe not a pickle, but he was at a book signing event at a gun store in Atlanta, and as someone asked him, would you call a special session for open carry? And he said he would if I have the votes.
Which he doesn't.
Law enforcement, the Sheriff's Association and the Police Chiefs Association are strenuously opposed, fiercely opposed.
Even though many, many years ago, we did have open carry, according to Marion Hammer.
Right. She said that she gave me the whole history of that.
She gave me the whole history of a long time ago when I talked to her for an interview, and I believe when it changed was under then Governor Martinez.
Yes.
And she told this whole kind of behind the scenes story of what was happening.
It's a great story. We need to get her back on to tell that story someday.
How we lost open carry in Florida.
Well, I mean, critics, the gun control advocates maintain that states that have open carry laws have higher incidents of gun violence than those without it. So I'm guessing that the governor, if he's going to make an announcement for a presidential run in July, will not have the votes, I'm using air quotes, to call a special session on open carry. It is quite a controversial issue, and this bill was signed quietly just days after there was another mass shooting at a school. This one was at a private school in Nashville.
It was signed on the same day that DeSantis was supposed to be in Tennessee with Governor Bill Lee at an event about 30 minutes outside of Nashville.
Yeah.
And I think the day before, we saw that event was indefinitely postponed.
Right. So, of course, this is handguns that we're referring to.
Right, not long guns.
Not long guns. So let's see. I have a question for you. We're about to finish up here, but what is left? What do we still have hanging out there?
A budget.
I heard Senate President Pasadomo say that she doesn't think there's going to be a lot of gamesmanship with the budget negotiations between the House and the Senate.
I don't know. How far apart are we?
I don't think they're that far apart, are they? I mean, there's usually just a couple of big issues. Is Visit Florida one of those? Do we know?
Oh God, I'm having a flashback.
Okay, here we go.
Oh, we want to get rid of Visit Florida now? Gee, we've never heard that before.
Yeah.
The Republican leadership in the House has long been antagonized by Visit Florida, because even going back to then House Speaker Richard Corcoran, who I think was the first to really strenuously, where have I heard that word before? To vociferously go after Visit Florida and cut its funding. That was when he was back on his whole corporate welfare kick.
Yeah. Was that
And I think Enterprise
was
Florida.
that related to the Gucci loafers? The Gucci loafer.
We don't ever bring up the Gucci loafers. And
Why not?
And we don't bring up the Chihuahua line.
Okay, now we have to. Now you have. I
opened the door,
You
and now
did.
I have to
It's
explain
a Pandora's box.
Oh, the box has been opened. Which one do I explain first?
It's Gucci loafers.
So Richard Corcoran, then House Speaker, later Education Commissioner, now interim president of New College of Florida. Actually, I don't remember.
He's making some coin. At
He's
New
making
College.
quite a bit of coin. Although I read in the Sarasota Herald Tribune that he's actually not making enough coin to afford the housing that he would need to afford if he lived in that area.
Is that interesting? Well, I'm sure Senate President Kathleen Passidomo's bill will help him.
Richard Corcoran is gonna live in a reconverted strip mall in Sarasota. I'm there for it. I'm going to help him move in.
Yeah, we'll see him at the Internet Cafe.
There you go.
On his way to New College.
Just came in to get my coffee.
All
Going
right,
to
but
work.
will he be wearing Gucci loafers?
What will
is the
he be
question.
wearing Gucci loafers? I don't remember. I remember the Gucci loafer line. I don't remember the story behind the Gucci loafers as much as I remember the other line.
Okay, well, let me just. It had to do with lobbyists wearing the Gucci loafers.
Sure.
That lobbyists were making too much money, and I think that there was an effort that the then House Speaker Corcoran did not want. Like cities and counties to be paying Gucci loafer clad lobbyists to represent them. I think there was a lot of angst over that. Okay, so now what is the Chihuahua line? Because that one I don't even know if I'm aware of.
So, as to the derivation of that second line, it was right after. So, for a brief amount of time, Richard Corcoran kind of sort of was figuring out whether he wanted to run for governor. This is in 2018, and so then he didn't, and so then he supported then Agriculture Commissioner Adam Putnam, but then. Mr. DeSantis got the Trump endorsement, which changed all of our realities. But before that, Richard Corcoran was a DeSantis critic, and he had a famous line. He called DeSantis, he said that DeSantis had a bulldog mouth, a chihuahua behind. I'm going to paraphrase there. I don't want to say the actual word. And he doesn't even know what the heck is going on in the state. And so he went from that to becoming one of Ron DeSantis's right-hand men, top men, if you will, top men.
His Goomba.
If you will.
Say it again. What was the line? One more time for listeners who might have missed it the first time around.
That DeSantis had a
Use
bulldog,
the actual words that Richard Corcoran said.
That DeSantis had a bulldog mouth, a chihuahua ass, and he doesn't even know what the heck is going on in the state.
There you have it. That's what Richard Corcoran, who is now the president,
interim president of New College of Florida in Sarasota,
and who was handpicked to become the state's commissioner of education by Governor Ron DeSantis.
Yes.
So that shows you you can mend fences.
You can turn it around, as they say.
All right, we got a lot more in store coming up in the legislative session. We've got the budget. We have the another big culture war issue, transgender treatment for children who have been diagnosed with gender dysphoria. Right. The banning of drag shows for children.
Oh yeah.
The bathroom wars.
Another bathroom bill.
Yeah, another bathroom bill. So we'll be back with all of that in a couple of weeks. But in the meantime, it has been great being in person live with you again, Jim Rosica. Thank you very much.
And let's not forget, we might still see a change to the state's resign to run law in case there is any confusion about whether Governor DeSantis would have to resign the governorship to run for the presidency.
Okay, well, you made predictions. I am going to make this prediction. There is no question that the legislature is going to do away with the resign to run law, which they passed to punish Charlie Crist when he was running when he became a Democrat. Hang on.
No, they changed it when he was being considered a running mate to John McCain.
That's right.
And then
they changed it when he was being considered a running mate for John McCain.
And they changed it back.
And then they changed it back because Jose Javier Rodriguez was considering running for Congress.
Oh.
He was a Democrat. And a state senator who was a Democrat. And now they're going to change it back to give a lift to Ron DeSantis because, hey, it's Freedom Florida.
It is Freedom Florida. And then finally, I have to mention that this has been such a weird session for me, and I'm certainly not covering session with the hands-onedness, with the presence that I've covered sessions past. But it is causing me to have weird dreams. I had a weird dream. Not last night, but the night before. It was a very horrible dream. It was like I was stuck in a horror movie, and part of the dream was that, for some reason, David Duchovny was playing Doctor Who.
From the X-Files.
And I said, that can't be right.
No, he's
never
not British.
played Doctor Who.
He's not British, is he?
And so he's not. And then all of a sudden, my wife appeared out of nowhere, and she said, oh, no, Jim, he's always been Doctor Who.
That is a nightmare.
And I woke up like a bolt upright, like what just happened?
Do you know my daughter Leela?
I may have met her once.
She is named after a Doctor Who character.
Well, there you go. Yes, from the...
she was the Savage.
Yes.
I don't know. I should put a little more thought into that.
That's where Leela came from.
Yes, that is where Leela came from.
That was I think she was one of the third Doctor's companions.
Yes, it was Tom Baker.
Yeah. Oh, okay. No, then it was the fourth Doctor.
It was Tom Baker.
I'm sorry, Tom Baker was the fourth.
So I do have, let's just finish with this. You say you haven't been as hands-on. I have been completely hands-off because I've been unable to leave the house.
Correct.
Really. And I'm not mobile enough to be able to get into the Capitol and navigate the Capitol. I mean,
sure.
I was able to get to the office and hobble up the stairs to get into the Terracotta room this morning. And I was very concerned that I would be missing a lot because, we're there from 8 a.m. until 8 p.m. Jim Saunders, our executive editor at News Service Florida, and I often were the last people to leave the Capitol for many years. And I was concerned that I'd miss the whispers, from not being able to hear what's going on either in the press galleries or on the fourth floor or in the halls. And just, I'm old and old school. Mm-hmm. And I believe in walking the halls, and that's how you build relationships and get, tips and learn about what people are talking about. And not being able to do that in person, I was really concerned that I would miss a lot. And I'm sure that I am missing a lot. But what I have found is that things are so scripted, that the legislative session is so planned, and that and with the supermajorities in both chambers, there just really are no surprises. So I feel like of all the years to not be there in person, this perhaps was the most appropriate year for me to not
You lucked out, basically.
Yeah.
If you had to break your tibia, this was the session to do it in.
Right. I mean, do you feel that? Do you feel that there's not a lot of chatter? I've heard that the halls are practically empty.
I suspect that is part of the reason, and obviously now that the Republicans have a supermajority, a 2/3 plus majority in both chambers, is also contributing to the fact that, even if you're there, if you blink, if you go to the bathroom, it's like, oh, another bill passed. I'm exaggerating, but that's the speed at which this session is moving, which brings me back, all the way back, full circle, to my prediction.
Early dismissal.
Early dismissal from this session.
Oh, that's another thing they're doing. They're changing the school hours.
Oh, wait, no, so we have to get up, we can get up later. We don't have to get up so early.
I don't know. Does it depend on what grade your kids are in?
No, I think it's generally speaking, we want kids to be able to get more sleep, and thus they should go to school later than they have to currently.
Well, that's good. You feel kids, you'll be free to sleep in.
Except me, man. I got to get up at 5 o'clock to do a newsletter for you people.
And we are so grateful to you for doing that. You all want to get first read, sign up, go to www.cityandstatefl.com/newsletters with an S on the end. And there you can sign up for the City and State Florida first read newsletter that gives you the top headlines and headlights of what's going on in Florida politics and policy. And also on that page, you can sign up for Dara's email, The DeSantis Files, which will tell you everything you need to know in a witty way about the man who may be a candidate for president of the United States. America's
and they're both
governor.
free.
They are. They're both free.
They're both free.
America's governor.
America's governor.
Tracking him like a mosquito in a Everglades swamp.
Dun, 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 dun. Okay, we're going to stop there.
Yeah, that was bad.
Thank you very much for coming to join me in person in the Terracotta room. It is good to see you back as much as you're back, and we will all wish you continued best wishes on your recovery.
And thank you. We'll be back in a couple of weeks. Thanks for listening.
A Deeper Dive with Dara is a podcast by City and State Florida, hosted by Dara Cam, produced by Ryan Daly, and music for the podcast was recorded by Periodic Labs, LLC, and performed by Ryan Daly and Danny Reyes.